Welcome to the location tracking does scale up talk. If you don't want to hear this talk, you might be in the wrong room. Please change room if you don't want to hear it. We won't.
Okay.
The talk will be given by Aaron Kaplan. He's doing lots of work in lots of different directions. He's a member of OLPC Austria. He helps creating and maintaining the huge mesh network over Vienna called Funkfeuer, and he's with Third AT, the Austrian Third, of course, and has strayed a little from his usual paths and discovered some interesting things. Please give it up.
Thanks. Okay, so can you hear me? Okay, yeah, good. I had the great idea to come to CCC and maybe to get in. I submitted a talk and now I want to get out. But I'll try to give my best. As you already mentioned, this is not the usual stuff that I'm talking about. So this is a little bit new for me. The location tracking talk is not about RFID hacking. It's not about GSM hacking. We had a lot of that. It's not about geographic information systems or tricks that you can do with that. Actually, it's not really about hacking. This talk is more about a social issue that I want to address. And I think so far nobody addressed it yet. This talk is not about the Sputnik RFID devices that we had the last 2 years, I think it was here. It's not about breaking things, and it's not about paranoia, because very often we get into this thing here that, oh, we're being monitored, etc. I'm going to talk about something where we are being monitored for sure, but the question is actually if we agree to that and if we want to have that or not. So this talk is about triangulation navigation in something which is probably the spectrum field. It works astonishingly well, and we all accept it, or we don't even notice it. And in a keynote talk, Frank Rieger was saying we should look at this CCC where the dragons are on the map, like the unknown areas, the fields where there might be problems. So I think I sort of by accident discovered one of those, and I want to start a discussion with you, and a social discussion about if we want to have that dragon layer and if we accept it or not. So, radio waves don't stop at the window. We're used to closing the door of the microwave oven, and then it sort of stops. The radio waves stop there, at least to some degree. 1 watt is allowed to go out, but that's not much. So if we take a look at the radio wave spectrum area, what if we could imagine if it would be just like visible light? We're all used to visible light. Visible light comes from here, from the light bulbs. It bounces off crazy, like in all directions. And from visible light, we can measure distances to the wall. We can see the refractions. We can see maybe some polarization effects. We can see colors. We can see absorption. Let's say the blue curtains absorb a lot. And light is, as we know, regular electromagnetic waves. But we're not used to seeing the other part of the spectrum. If we would be able to see the other parts of the spectrum, we would, have probably a very funny, trippy time. We could see the Wi-Fi networks. We would understand them implicitly. We would understand that this doesn't stop at the door. We would understand the effects. It would be all natural for us. But since we don't see it, it's not natural. And we wouldn't, for example, be afraid of the GSM, of living below the GSM tower, because we would actually be able to see that the field, if it's not directed right down at us, it would actually go to the neighbor's window, and just below us, usually the antenna diagram would show us that there is not much there. Yeah? And we would also understand the triangulation and distance measurement as we do with normal light. We have a feeling of how far things are with normal light, but for electromagnetic waves, we don't, in general terms, we don't understand that so well from our experience. So some time ago, like 2006, I was experimenting with a friend of mine, with Doron, about how can we visualize waves, general waves. We took acoustic for that matter, and we took simple wave calculations and created some point sources, and we're just interested where do the waves add up, and what would the contour plots be, the forms be, if we could be able to see that in a three-dimensional way. So we calculated that, put that code into the NVIDIA graphics cards, and arrived at something like this. And we even got some parts wrong in the beginning, like the near field was wrong. Anyway, it was an interesting experiment, and it gives us some feeling of how it looks. The other perspective is, of course, the spectrum analyzer. This is actually taken from the Hack Center just 2 days ago. You can see channel 1 in the 2.4 gigahertz range is really highly occupied. Yeah. So, why am I saying that? If we would understand that, we would, we would have a better feeling for it. On the other hand, is if we take a look at the current, just as a recap, the current, physics, the current CPU's speeds, then one tick would be on a 3 gigahertz CPU would be 0.3 nanoseconds. And the light travels, just as a recap, 30 centimeters in 1 nanoseconds. So we are in that range where we can really measure with those speeds. The other way, this would be the radar ping kind of thing. The other way would be, of course, triangulation through, here are some base stations. We have been hearing a lot about GSM on this CCC, and basically, the signal-to-noise ratio can be measured at each device. We get the physics tells us the power goes by 1 over the square of the distance. If we know the original power of the signal at the source, we can again triangulate. So this is nothing new. Just wanted to recap that. Now, what happened like some time ago is I was updating, like many of you, to the new version of the Apple operating system, and I love Little Snitch. Who uses Little Snitch? Quite a few. For the rest of you who have a Mac, please use it. It's really, really practical. It's basically an outgoing firewall, and it will warn you of connections which you are not aware of. So in the beginning, you'll be really surprised of what your Mac is actually talking to the network. So Little Snitch warned me that in the new Mac OS X operating system, a process called Location D was trying to connect to Mac services, apple.com, on port 443 SSL. Okay, I'm curious. I took a look in Google, what is Location D? Well, it's a new service of Apple to automatically set the time zone. So when you travel a lot, maybe in the US you have different time zones, you travel from East Coast to West Coast, you want your computer to automatically go to the new time zone. It's extremely, practical maybe for you if you're lazy. But what really happens is that Apple actually gets the BSSIDs, the Wi-Fi networks in the area, sends it, the location D sends it to Apple, and will ask Apple, where am I? In which time zone? Actually, which latitude, longitude? And this database source is very accurate. Now, if we take a look at the small print of this advertisement, Location information depends on data collected by third parties. These data services are subject to change and may not be available in all geographic areas, blah, 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 blah. So we have a hint already that this data comes from an external data source. So how do I turn it off or on? You know, I want to control if my laptop talks to Apple. So if you go to preferences, to security, here you have a way to turn it off. If you have a Mac, check now if it's turned on by default. It was for me. Now, the second part to check if it's on or off is here in date and time zone, set time zone automatically using current location. This is actually which will use this location D service. This is an application for the location D service to go and ask Apple where is my computer now, in which time zone. Now, I tried to connect to that from the hack center. Well, it didn't work. The Wi-Fi signal was just too messed up there. But it's not only Apple which is doing that. It's also, you have the same stuff on the Android phone or the G1. This is unfortunately German. It says, do you want to allow Google Maps to use the network communication and the GPS device? Ah, this is something new. It's not just my laptop anymore. It's also something, a phone with a GPS device. So actually, it's sending the BSS IDs, the Wi-Fi network IDs, including the GPS information to somewhere, in that case Google, and asking, you know, where am I exactly? But actually, it knows. It has already the GPS information. Well, it gets back more detailed information and actually reported where this BSS ID is located according to GPS. Now, if a couple of users do that, we get crowdsourcing. We get a very detailed picture of the distribution of BSS IDs and the signal strengths of those, okay? So we have a really smart way to use us here as a distributed sensor network. Okay? So the company behind most of these things, or the market leader, is Skyhook Wireless, based in Boston, and it's founded in 2003. It services the location-based service market, and it was very successful in creating a Wi-Fi positioning system, WPS or XPS, which takes advantage of hundreds of millions of Wi-Fi access points throughout populated areas to give you precise information. Okay? So this is taken from the Skyhook Wireless website. Now let's take a look at the location-based service market. What is that? According again to Skyhook Wireless, they believe that soon all mobile applications in app stores will be tied to location, or many of them. So they assume a massive growth in that market, and the Yankee Group projects that this market will explode to 7 billion applications in 2013. Don't know if it's true. I believe it. The other part of the market is, of course, you know, how big is that money-wise? If we take a look at all the smartphone sales now, this is getting pretty big. So recently I tried to ask in Vienna, in my hometown, tried to ask for somebody if we can get an iPhone for Christmas for somebody, right? So Apple Store told me, no, sold out, sorry. They sold 200,000 in Vienna, which is, or I don't know if it was Vienna or Austria, but it was really a lot for a small country. So everybody replaces their mobile phones to smartphones. Smartphones have GPS devices inside. So we're all a big, massive cloud crowdsourcing for Skyhook Wireless. So Skyhook Wireless is in your iPhone, your iPod Touch. So the iPod Touch will be just a consumer because it doesn't have a GPS device as far as I know. It will just consume this data, so it's practical for the iPhone Touch users. But the iPhone users actually will transmit GPS information. The G1 Android, Snow Leopard, and then there are a couple of tools like Undercover iPhone or Cyber Angel Y-Track, which are very practical. They allow you to monitor where your phone is going. So in case you lose it, it's really a practical service. You can delete it, you can even turn on the camera. For Undercover iPhone, you can turn on the camera of the laptop if it gets stolen. So, you know, it's a service that I would personally accept, but still, it sends constantly to Skyhook Wireless. Another really nice thing is the iFi camera. Who knows the iFi camera? Yeah, okay, so it's a couple. So it's basically a small card that you put into your camera, and it has a Wi-Fi chip inside, and it will actually also use the Skyhook Wireless service to geolocate where you took that picture and put that into the picture metadata and send that off over Wi-Fi. Skyhook Wireless has another service, Loki, which you can integrate into your web page. It has a very simple JavaScript API, and basically you can make your web server location aware, and the user will just get some, I think, Java code, and the Java code will tell the server where the client is. So another small but really nice thing is Layer. You can download that to your, I think, iPhone and G1 for sure. Maybe you heard the talk about augmented reality before. This is basically it has augmented reality, but connects to, again, Skyhook Wireless and also other databases, I think Google also, and will actually report to tell your phone where the next pizzeria is or whatever. So it's you can point it to somewhere, get the picture from the camera, and have directions on it. It's very practical, actually. Okay, so how does Skyhook Wireless work exactly? I said before, the BSS IDs of the Wi-Fi networks are scanned and reported in the signal strengths, but it's not only that. It's of course also the cell tower ID. It's the GPS, as we said before. And allow me to briefly show you the advertisement by Skyhook Wireless directly. Hope this works. So this is the XPS advanced version. So they advertise it to 10 to 20 meters accuracy. I saw like up to 5 personal experience. Since GPS doesn't work very well indoor, Wi-Fi does. You also get the indoor effect. So I think it's pretty interesting to see how, honestly, they report about all this, and nobody's talking about the privacy implications of it. So we have the cell phone towers, the GPS, the Wi-Fi here. So we can see we're actually living in a very dense field of electromagnetic waves here. So your client is on your smartphone, runs on really many smartphones. We'll collect all the data, ask the service, where am I? I have this data. The service says, oh, you're there, and thanks for the data. Okay, so initially Skyhook Wireless was driving around with cars. They also advertise it on the web page, and then at some point you can really use the crowd. But you need to bootstrap this process somehow. Okay. So it's really nice to see how all the data goes in. Woo, woo, yeah. And now we're conquering the world. Okay, so we saw briefly before the coverage map of at least the US. Yep. Okay, in Europe it looks like that. Basically all major cities are really well covered. If you have an iPhone or G1, just try it. In the US, it's of course the West Coast and the East Coast, and something in between a little bit. Okay, so this is Skyhook Wireless, but as I said before, you need to bootstrap that somehow. Now, another database for location information is MaxMind. Who has been using MaxMind? A couple of, okay, so MaxMind is a Geo IP database. Basically, if you have an IP address, you can ask MaxMind, where is that IP address? This is actually not so, it was not so clear to have that information by default because the IP address could be anywhere, theoretically. But they managed to have a pretty decent database with 83% accuracy. And usually in IT security at work, we use that to at least locate to where an IP address is in which city. And usually it's used for fraud detection for online shops. The database is extremely practical, and I recommend that if you have anything to do with geolocation, use it. It's for free, and they have a CSV file, comma separated value file, and you can download it for free. You can use it for free, and the free version of the database is almost as accurate as the commercial version, which is a little bit more up to date, but it's okay. It's very simple to use. And they have 4.9 million networks prefixes stored. And basically they have a very easy user interface. It looks like that. In PHP you would say require once net geoip PHP, then tell it where the database is. Then you say to that geoip object, to that handle, look up location, the remote address of the client connecting to your server. And then you have the location is in latitude, longitude, location, region, city, everything is here. It's extremely simple. Now, Skyhook Wireless used, I think, MaxMind to bootstrap and to fill up the gaps where their cell phone tower and BSSID database was not accurate enough. So, works very well together. Now the question is that a problem for us if we're being tracked? And to what extent? And I think the question shouldn't be answered like easily, like in a automatic reaction. Yes, it's bad. We're pro-privacy. I think we should look a little bit deeper. We should understand how it works exactly. Because if you read the documents from Skyhook Wireless, and if you read the API, by default, it is not so clear that it's a big privacy invasion. Because actually what they do is you register, or your application on your phone registers with that service. And basically, the ideal situation would be that your phone generates a random cookie, or a random number. It sends that as the registration process, and then it keeps that ID and you communicate over that ID. But Skyhook Wireless by default doesn't know who you are. It's not really in the API. It's just that, I'm not sure if they try to respect privacy or not, or if it's really if it makes a difference if you're just a number for them, or if it doesn't make a difference, because you can still do profiling. You can still track where that ID is going to. And maybe even that information is very valuable. And the other idea that I had was, in Germany at least, a public IP address is considered personal data. So the question is, if we transmit this location request over a public IP address to some database like that, do we automatically send personal information to that database in addition to the request, just by using a public IP address. I'm not so 100% sure about that, huh? Maybe. But what for sure is really happening with iPhones is you have this great mobile me service, okay? It's great for deleting your phone once it gets stolen. But for that, for sure, you need to know who's the owner of the phone and have a login and password for that. So that's for sure tied to personal information. So I'm not sure if Skyhook Wireless is to blame, but I think the combination with this ID from Skyhook Wireless and, let's say, your mobile me ID, that's critical. And I think if you can combine that, and it's very easy to combine because the ID from Skyhook Wireless doesn't change, then you have a privacy problem. Now, the other thing is you can easily install tracking software on your girlfriend's or boyfriend's iPhone or laptop. And this is, I think we're going to see some privacy attacks over this path. Okay. So let's look at the API. So the API is very simple. You have a WPS IP location object structure. You have a WPS location structure. If you take the, let's take a look at the location structure. So we have a horizontal position error, that's meters of error. So you get a radius on your iPhone where you are. You have a number of access points that were used for triangulation. You have a speed if you're going in a direction. You have the bearing, the direction. And you have the information of the street address and latitude and longitude. That's already pretty much. Yeah. I think from that you can see most of the data which is going back and forth. So the functions are, you have essentially three important functions. You have a location request. This is a one-time location request. You have a simple you have a periodic location request where actually you get updates all the time. And in all of those you can see this authentication token. And the authentication token, that unique ID that I was talking before, is exactly just this. It's just a string, okay? Good. So, who cares about that? Today, for getting some food, I was out leaving this dome of geekness here, and I went to Alexa, to the shop back there. Yeah? And I was like, wow, this is a different world. So these guys are normal, and we are actually, you know, the more of those people out there than here in here. And I think none of them would care if they're tracked, because actually they get a service, they get a benefit. And maybe some little bit paranoid people would turn it off, but who really cares? As I said before, the joining of the unique cookie, the unique ID with other personal data, that's just somehow too easy, in my opinion. So what happens when, you know, Skyhook Wireless loses its data because of a hacker attack? What happens when we start to think about, I mean, in Germany, in Europe, we should think about, is it actually okay to, by default, to send data from the EU to the US? Actually, there should have been some discussion about it. That's what I'm trying to say. And what happens if there is some inside job, somebody who shouldn't be there at that company at Skyhook Wireless? Maybe they don't control it, maybe they do, I don't know. But it's a possibility. And for me, finally, the last question is really, shouldn't they ask us before? You know, it's this really big, massive crowdsourcing on a massive scale. And whose data was it actually in the first place? We generated that data without actually noticing it. So what can you do with that data? Even if it's in anonymous, completely anonymized, you can really use it for geomarketing. It's great for geomarketing. You can, of course, if it's that precise, send cruise missiles to that location. Or if you have that data and if you're a terrorist, you can plan great terrorist plots. Now, I think I want to give you an example of a mobile phone operator in Austria. I think they're doing it in an okay way. They're selling that data in a completely anonymized way because they get that data. GSM networks work like that, right? But they sell the data. But again, we have the question, is it actually okay to sell that data without asking the user? Shouldn't there be some kind of opt-out or something like that? So if we continue these thoughts, we're surrounded, I'm coming back to the beginning now, we're surrounded by this electromagnetic cosmos around us. Yeah? If we have that picture, that every point in space is associated with latitude, longitude, height, and a tuple of data, timestamp and extra data. If we start to have that picture, then maybe we can understand our reality in a different way, in a better way. Maybe we can start to deal with it. What happens when we have more and more sensors, more and more stuff on the ISM bands? The Internet of Things is coming to mind. We should think about that. And again, when we have these data collections, what happens with data theft? So, what can we do about it? I was thinking, in the community Wi-Fi network in Vienna, the Funkfar network, is this a problem? Is this scanning of BSSIDs a problem? Not so much, because we use lots of the same BSSIDs, because otherwise we had problems with the drivers, but that's an accident. That wasn't planned. So we could theoretically go to ad hoc mode and use the same BSSIDs again and again and start a big mesh, and then there would be nothing really to uniquely identify. Probably. Maybe we would find something else to identify, maybe IP addresses. We could theoretically confuse the databases. I don't know if it's a good way, because it's, as I said, it's also practical. I think the only thing that we can really do is start this public discussion about it, if we want that, and to what extent we want that, and what are the rules for these massive crowdsourced databases. Should we forbid it? Should we have some kind of a zero knowledge proof between the mobile device and the server, that there's some kind of a guaranteed, mathematically guaranteed privacy statement in there? I don't know if it's possible. Or another thing that came to my mind is, maybe if this is really actually sort of public information, if it's the BSSID which is sent all across the place, maybe it should have been public in the first place anyway, and the database should not be in the hands of a private company, but maybe it should be something like OpenStreetMap for BSSIDs, cell IDs, anything else we can find. Yeah, it all comes down to democracy needs transparency and discussion. So actually what I want to do is just start this discussion now. That's why I condensed the talk. So please take the microphones and bring up some ideas. Thanks.
Really hard technical challenges here. A few additional points. You were focusing on Skyhook.
Yes.
Firefox has a location service in it.
Yes.
It is accessible to web pages. It is using a Google-based backend. Go figure. Who sees your IP address every few minutes?
Yes. And I want to just add, it was very interesting to see how quickly these changes went through W3C. It was really fast. This moved into Firefox really quickly. Yeah, sorry.
Yes. It's a fun comment to make. I suppose you've seen the logo on my laptop. I will do a little bit more Firefox bashing at this point. I think it's an interesting piece to consider in the context of websites learning about location, how you can actually revoke a permission you have given. if I've told a website once that they can get my permission, and if I've told, if I've told my browser once that this website can get my location information, I should better be able to undo that mistake at some point. I'll read to you the instructions on the Firefox website how to do that. Navigate to the site to which you've given permission. Go to the Tools menu, then select Page Info. Select the Permissions tab. Change the settings for share location. I rest my case.
Okay, thanks.
You mentioned OpenStreetMap. Have you already seen the special tags for cell ID and so on?
No. I asked recently, 2 days ago, people from the OpenStreetMap project at their corner, and they weren't aware of it. I'm not really a very big user of, in the sense of programmer, API user of OpenStreetMap, but I think maybe it's a good start to have a layer for that.
Yeah, actually, layer always means the data is outside of the OpenStreetMap database. Okay. So actually, I try to get some more nodes with this text into the database, but can I switch to German?
For me, it's okay. I don't know.
Okay.
French?
Okay. Yes. There's a page which describes some schema at the wiki, OpenStreetMap wiki. Each time if I try to show it to someone, I don't find it. But there is a proposal, but nobody uses it, actually. Okay. So I wrote a mail about a year ago to some guys who collect the cell IDs of GSM base stations. And yeah, put your data to OpenStreetMap and said, is there a schema? I could get, I sent them a link, but nothing happened until now. So okay. There must just be more advertisement for this text, I think.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a quick comment about the Geo Location API by the W3C. The one nice thing that the existence of this API does is it sort of addresses your question about ownership of geo databases, because the existence of that API now makes it possible for everybody to build a geo IP database.
Agree.
And I hope that happens, and I hope that, I'm sure there are going to be projects around that, and I'm looking forward to have those.
Mm. But I want to add, I'm really not so sure about it, if this path is a better way than this path. Like a privately owned database has some advantages and some risks. A public database has advantages and risks. Of course, it has the more freedom of the democratic aspect of it. But of course, on the other hand, if everybody can basically access that information too easily of where you are, then you might also have a problem in a public database. So I think the question really boils down to who owns that piece of that tuple piece where you are right now, or your phone is right now. Who owns that? And it's a very, very basic question somehow.
To be honest, I don't. I think it's a very. It's not an easy question to answer. I'm just happy that it's not information that will be artificially. That will have an artificially high value because only a small amount of people can generate it. That's what makes me happy about the existence of that API. Well, yeah, about the privacy implications, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine, all the smartphones, and let's say we had the riots in Iran, like in 2 years, not now, yeah. And everybody had smartphones and iPhones because they like it, right? And somebody smart finds out how to capture that data with, let's say, a man-in-the-middle attack. I wrote it's possible with the SSL Skyhook Wireless connection, and actually capture that at the central gateways. Oh my God. They know in real time where all the demonstrators are.
Yeah, but we have technology to protect against that.
For example?
Tor is a network that hides your IP address.
Well, you're just hiding the IP address, but not the BSS IDs which your phone collects. No? I don't hear you.
It was the
I still didn't hear it.
The Revolutionary Guard just purchased the largest mobile phone provider. Was that it? In Iran.
Okay, so actually, I think I should repeat the questions or the comments. The Revolutionary Guards purchased the biggest, telco in Iran. Yeah, okay. I forgot about that, sorry, for the stream.
Just a quick question. Can you confirm that, on Android, if you indeed have a GPS fix, that it still sends over the Wi-Fi information together with the latitude and longitude to the server?
So if I understood you correctly, if I can confirm that the handheld will send the GPS information together with the
with the information about the
BSS IDs.
Yeah, etc.
Okay, if it sends that. Essentially, yes, because you can just check it yourself, either by SSL man in the middle attack or going to the website and reading about it.
Okay, because to me it wasn't so sure. If I'm a user, I do get the case when I don't have a GPS fix if I'm indoors, for example.
Yes,
that
okay.
that the phone is kind of sending this information to the server. But on the other hand, if I do have a GPS fix, that would be totally awkward.
Okay, I got it. Yeah. So the question is if this GPS information is also transmitted when you're indoor, and if it's actually necessary to send the GPS, send the information when you're outdoor and you have the GPS information anyway.
Yeah.
Well, it's maybe not necessary for your phone, but it's really practical for the servers.
Okay. And the second question was.
It's called fine-tuning of the database.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the second question was this BSS IDs. Is there any technical reasons why these strings are used? Because
Okay.
I mean they're not unique at all, and not. Yeah.
Yes.
Don't they use MAC addresses or something?
Essentially, it is like a MAC address. So the question is why are BSS IDs used? Because they're not unique at all. Yes, you can also change MAC addresses and make them non-unique, but the BSS ID is also 48 bits, like a MAC address, and it's pretty unique. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, the Google Location API is using both the BSS ID and the ESS ID, so both MAC address and network name are uploaded to Google's database.
Okay, so that makes it more precise even? Okay, I didn't know that.
I don't have a real question. I just have I noticed that when you try to locate your own laptop using the Loki service, you by accident get the data who is currently or recently moved to your area, because if you're trying to map all the BSS IDs which are around you and try to ask Loki where are they, then you will experience some BSS IDs which are reported of being some kilometers away. So it's a safe guess to say these people recently moved into my area. Just to think about it.
Okay, so I repeat. So, no, okay, it's okay. I don't have to repeat. Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, and did you have problems hearing me? And another option might be, I don't know, I mean, I just came to the idea it would result in a kind of DOS attack to Loki, but I mean, generate every BSS ID and ask for the location.
I think
shouldn't that free the database in some kind?
I had the same thought, but again, I mean, you're on the other hand, you're disturbing a service which actually has some value for people.
Of course, I mean, it's always a two-sided sword.
Right, the sword is always two-sided. So I guess my estimate would be that they would detect that unless you really hide it, I don't know, from a botnet or whatever. It would be rather easy to detect that with some fraud detection algorithm that this IP address is asking all the BSS IDs. you could even optimize that because you could say, okay, this Wi-Fi card usually only uses this MAC address or BSSIDs are in place, and you only vary the bits at the end.
Yeah, and of course it would only make sense for a short period of time because the location will change for a certain amount of BSSIDs, of course.
But the question is, should we actually, start a public database like that ourselves? Crowdsourcing, but on a more democratic basis? Yeah.
Okay. Did you do some research or inquiry with Skyhook or Navizon services, wherever they have a form by which you can ask them if your personal BSSID or some BSSID you know belongs to you or your organization, and submit an abuse or removal request? And as a second part, are there any legal procedures or tools that you can take upon against these services, because the data of your BSSID was collected without your consent, right? So is there any way to try to recover? On their site or maybe by mail? Or, and second is
I didn't find it, but that's why I also want to talk about this, publicly, because maybe it's enough if there is a service, an opt-out service for that. Maybe not, or maybe we need an opt-in service, but then how do they ask all those people? Maybe they should, I don't know. It's, I think to answer that question, we really need to sit down with lawyers who take a look at the data protection laws in Europe, especially, and discuss if this use of the BSSIDs without consent is actually okay or not. And I'm not sure if I can answer that. Yeah? But I just did, yeah.
Did you try Electronic Frontier Foundation, EFF, legal advice?
No, not yet. But I think it should be done. Yeah.
Hi. Just a little background history on Skyhook. Skyhook Wireless was actually started about, I think, 2 years ago, and their main target was doing their WSD system for truckers. Instead of using very costly GPS technology, they would have a simple computer with an AP in it, and the AP would get wireless access, MAC addresses, and SSIDs to triangulate position. Their original means to get location information for SSIDs was paying people to war drive for them. And you can, they used to have a form on their website. You can sign up. If you had all your own equipment, they would send you a check for new entries in their database. I'm curious if you know of if they're still doing that, if this whole new smartphone era is slowly replacing their need and necessity for paying people to war drive.
I think it's still being done, because if you just look back at the map, there are huge areas which are not really covered. Just look at this map here, and look, somebody was driving through Poland up to Latvia. You can really see it. Yeah, this was a person driving through. And if you take a look at their webpage, this still exists. But of course, it's really massively enhanced by this crowdsourcing aspect.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think doing a technical approach to protect our privacy would not help in this way. I think we should clearly recognize that a company like, for example, Apple asks us, or the applications need to ask us to send location data to Apple or to the application, and they do not ask us about our phone sending location information to Apple. So basically there's a different view, I think, for example, for these applications and the phone data itself. So the phone sends geo information without asking us, but the applications are not allowed to send geo data without asking us. So I think we should clearly vote for some kind of jurisdictional or rights question to clear up the rights question, and to just force them to ask us before if we would allow to source them our data.
I think I want to add to that statement, to that comment, is that yes, even if they ask us, I think I had something here. Even if they ask us, this is an update from my G1, right? It actually asks me, do you want this? But as an average user, I wouldn't understand, I would just click yes. So this is actually the issue, is how do you explain this to your mother? And without, in a very fair manner, and that she can really decide. So I think that's also part of answering the problem. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I have a proposal maybe. So just give some places where BSS IDs and other information that is stored on the computers or on the mobile devices are exchanged on a random basis. Like if you go to Alexander Place and there's a place where there's a kind of a switch or whatever that sends the information, okay, give me your BSS ID, I give it to somebody else. Random. So
okay.
The database won't be disturbed because the data is collected anyway. It doesn't matter if it's you as a person that collects the data, but it's the devices that are collecting the information. Every time you go to such a place, your BSS ID is changed, and you can be sure that you are tracked only for the time period of those times you are not next to one of those spots. Mm-hmm. Make those spots public, and everybody can go there and exchange the ID, and that's fine.
But they would have to bring, if I understood you correctly, they would have to bring their access points, power them up there, and let them somehow get the BSS IDs of their access points changed, because actually that's what it's not the client. The client just gets all the access points, the BSS IDs of the access points around.
But the tracking, the most important thing that you can be tracked by, I think, is the mobile device.
Yes, but you can opt out from that. You can turn it off.
Yeah, but
it's so practical. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's why I say don't opt out for that. Just exchange randomly the numbers. So
okay, I got you.
If I meet him in place, our numbers are exchanged. He goes that way, I go the other way around.
Okay.
And the database is stable. So he goes in the other direction. That's fine.
Okay.
And I go the other direction, and my device sends the signal, but with another information given to it.
Okay.
So I'm not trackable anymore, and make that on places where the people gather normally, or make it on a random basis that every mobile device can ask for that. So if, especially the Iran scenario, make it possible that if there's a crowd of like whatever 10 or 15 or 20 people in a place, that actually triggers the situation of, okay, now we exchange them. Mm-hmm. So you have all those people together, and that randomly triggers the exchange, and everything's closed, so or secure. And if you do that, or you don't want to mess with the database on those devices that are stable, I think that's fine, as long as you don't allow to connect those information with the personal information of the one who's living there, and you can exchange those too. It doesn't really matter. You only have to change them on a regular basis, or so.
Yeah, got your point. Yeah, might be an option. I'm just a little bit critical if it scales up to million people.
Well, that depends on how big the number of random, or how sure the randomness is, I think, is it? So make sure that it's there's enough randomness to this situation or to the system, and then you can manage the same amount of people as before.
Maybe. Okay, thanks.
Hi. I think there are two separate but related points that we have to think about here.
Okay.
The first one is the right of the users to their data and to their location. And the reality is this service is a commercial service,
right,
and we have every right to turn it off. And it's our job as hackers, as developers, as people who run websites and blogs to, if we think the general public isn't aware that they can turn this off and isn't aware at how this information is being used, it's our job to spread that information and let people turn it off if they want to. And we have technology for anonymously locating ourselves, and that's GPS. And I think we should encourage our governments to continue putting money into maintaining that technology, because it works very well and it can continue to work without having to deal with any of these problems.
Right.
The second point that we have to think about is Skyhook's data and their rights to the data that you were talking about. And it's kind of funny, I was just reading a paper a few minutes before this talk called "What Color Are Your Bits?" And it describes, we as computer scientists and as hackers tend to not think of data as having ownership, as having metadata associated with it. Data is data, no one owns it. But the reality is it's not that way. A song is a song, even if it just ends up being a series of bits. And the same thing is true of this data. It may be publicly available, anyone may be able to collect it, but the truth is that Skyhook collected it. And the result of that is that that data is their data.
Hang on. They collected some parts initially, and then the users collected without really actually understanding what they're collecting.
That's true, but that was all done through agreements with companies like Apple and Google. And I mean, this is why open source software exists. If we wanted to branch Firefox, branch Android to not do this, we can do that. But I don't believe that it's our right to tamper with Skyhook's data or to try to go against their terms of service to anonymize ourselves.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we should, understand the issues and find a socially acceptable solution. And probably this will not involve technology, actually, or hacking anything. It will probably, we probably have to involve maybe politicians, lawyers, whoever. Yeah? We need to find a social consensus on what needs to be done for this kind of problem. So yes, I agree with you.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Okay.
To bring another point into the discussion, I'd like to quote a short abstract of XMPP, which is Jabber, enhancement proposal number 80. Abstract, the specification defines an XMPP protocol extension for communicating information about the current geographical and physical location of an entity, which solves many problems because you have to authorize users to chat with them, and then you have to authorize users for their GPS location. I think it's a good approach to this problem.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
I want to make a short observation. As far as I understood, the users are allowed to push data into the database, to update them and to refine the information. But how hard is to poison the database with fake data? Because
I didn't try it, but it comes back to your statement is yes, it's probably possible. I didn't try it.
Because you say these services are shipped with every, for example, Snow Leopard machine. So I expect in the near future, probably this functionality will be shipped also to Windows or stuff like that. And the first virus that inject poison data in the database, and no service will work anymore.
Yes, I confirm that Microsoft is actually working on something similar. I don't know what yet. They wouldn't, wouldn't tell me, but it is a big market. So yes, they're also working on it.
Well, I think no questions are left and no time is left.
Okay.
So thank you, Aaron.
Okay, thanks a lot.